Suicide in the construction industry has become an epidemic. More than 5,500 construction workers die by suicide every year in the United States. That's 15 workers dying by suicide every single day. The suicide rate in the construction industry is more than 3 times greater than the national average. And a construction worker has a 500% greater chance of dying by suicide than from an accident leading to a fatality on a job site. So what can we do about it? In construction safety, there is something called the focus or fatal 4, which refers to the most dangerous causes of harm or death. These include falling, caught between, struck by, and electrocution. Looking at the suicide numbers, we need to rethink the focus or fatal 4 and add the 5th element to make it the focus or fatal 5, which would make it falling, caught between, struck by, electrocution, and suicide due to unaddressed mental illness. Just like physical safety programs, this issue will require deliberate planning, culture change, and forethought to think through how to handle crisis situations, as well as intentional conversations with employees and supervisors that incorporate repetition and reinforcement. Just as an apprentice will not master their craft in one day, neither will this problem be solved overnight. Just like learning anything new, it takes practice, it takes repetition, and it takes reinforcement. The individual workers are your organization's product. They are your tools. They are your representatives to your customers in the field. So I would ask you, would you neglect to maintain your equipment, or would you take care of it for the valuable asset that it is? Creating and implementing a plan into your company's workforce and culture will pay off with safer and healthier employees, which will decrease your company's costs substantially in the long term and create lifelong employees that will walk through walls for you and walk through walls for your organization. So what are you waiting for? Call BPM Wellness today to schedule your free strategy session and find a solution that is tailored to your organization's unique needs. The problem is big, the solution is simple, but simple doesn't mean easy. This will take work, this will take commitment, and we are here for you and your people through it all. Bearing Point Wellness, simple healthcare solutions to complex problems. All right, hello everybody. My name is Trent Williams. I'm the president and CEO of Bearing Point Mental Wellness, or BPM Wellness, and we're so glad that you could join us today. Today we're going to be really trying to produce evidence for a claim. And what that claim is that mental and psychological safety, or the lack thereof, is the #1 issue that is affecting your business, your workforce, your teams today, and causing your business to potentially be hemorrhaging money, but losing workforce, losing good people, and maybe not producing the healthiest environments. So my goal today is not to shame anybody, but to really open people's eyes to the reality of how mental safety, psychological safety, goes beyond just mental illness, goes beyond suicide, and really allows the opportunity to intervene on an early level for people before they reach that red zone of where suicide happens. Much like physical health, doctors say that, people don't typically go to the hospital until their health symptoms have caused their health to deteriorate to about 60%. The same is true and equally true for mental wellness, mental health. There are some genetic components to it, and equally there are environmental factors that lead to mental illness, lead to the situations that really are that tinderbox for suicide to occur. But before we do that, I'm going to start by showing you a video of this gentleman who is working construction, and I want everybody in the chat, and as we're going along, if you have questions, I should say this, if you have questions for myself, for Bob Swanson, for Yolanda McIntosh, our guest speakers, and we'll introduce them here in a little while. If you have questions for us, go ahead and throw those in the chat. We'll try to get to them, but what I can promise you is that if we don't get to every question, or if we don't see every question, we will send out the answers to those questions. So you will get answers to your questions. If not immediately, we will have a transcript of that. You can ask these questions anonymously if you choose, or you can just ask them as yourself. But as we before we get going, I want you to watch this video, and I'm going to share my screen. I want you to watch this video, and we're going to play it a couple times because it's a short clip. Pay attention, since I know that we have quite a few people who work in safety, and we all have a priority for our organizations and our workforce of safety. Just to yourself or in the chat, feel free to list any safety concerns that you yourself see with this individual working. So again, I'm going to play this clip probably 2 or 3 times, 20 seconds long, and then we'll go from there. There isn't sound, so don't worry about adjusting your speakers. I think maybe there's a hum of the lift cart, of the boom lift, but here we go. So yeah, pay attention, take a look, see what kind of safety concerns you yourself would have as a business owner, as a safety professional. I'm going to play it one more time here. Yep, and Christopher says no harness, absolutely. I'm gonna play it one more time here since it's quick. No personal fall protection, absolutely. Worker not tied off, no glasses, no gloves. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Alan. Anything else? No spotter on the ground level, absolutely. Unsecured items resting on top rail. You know, this is all great. Hard hat on backwards, absolutely. One last time here, because this is great. Thank you for all your participation. You know, Stacy said hard hat on backwards. Alan, unsecured items resting on the top rail. No traffic control. Thank you, Susie. Absolutely. I'm gonna add one. No safety vest. All right. So let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. If you guys didn't recognize that handsome-looking gentleman with the long hair, that was me. That was me when I was working in the industry. And thank you. I hope I'm saying this right. Ablia for poor visibility of area and movement. Absolutely. So that is me. That is me when I was about 22 years old. Working in the industry. So I worked architectural sheet metal roofing and siding for a number of years. I didn't show this. I don't want the spotlight to be on me, but I do want to talk about safety going beyond what you can see. So in the chat, feel free to answer this either way, or don't feel obligated to. Did anybody think what might be going on underneath that hard hat? You know, underneath what we can see, safety concerns about what might be going on in that person's life, what might be causing distraction. It's not a trick question. There is nothing in that video that was evidence to point to that direction either way. But I want to emphasize that safety goes beyond just what we can see. Those violations that are right there in front of us, those are easier to see. But when we are talking about safety, a very real component of that is a person's psychological safety. And what psychological safety is, it is it goes into a person's feeling of belonging, a person feeling connected in their workplace, a person who feels trust, that they can trust the people working alongside them to keep themselves safe, but trust them with their lives, not only their physical lives, but with their stories of their lives, with deepening relationships. And it goes beyond even that. It's that sense of feeling like your supervisors have your back. If you were struggling with something, that you could go to your supervisor and have a discussion without fear of recourse or retribution, without fear of losing your job, without fear of having it ignored and swept under the rug. So when I was working at this time in my life, as that person you saw up in the cart with all those safety violations, yes, that was me. I think I'm that company is no longer around. So if anyone from OSHA is on, I don't know if there's a statute of limitations on fines there, but I could probably see there's quite a few of those. But in that person's life, in my life at that time, I was going through some challenges at home. We had a very tense household. My wife was 7 months pregnant with our youngest daughter, and we had an almost 3-year-old at this time. It wasn't that much after this time where we had some pretty explosive fights in my house. My wife and I yelling back and forth. I had been struggling with chemical dependency issues. I had been struggling with mental health related to past trauma and never knew that that's what was causing a lot of my behaviors, was causing a lot of my aggression. And my wife, similarly, she had some past trauma and was not aware to the degree that that affected her. But even going beyond that past trauma, every human being goes through tough times. I would say every human being sees some form of trauma in their lives. If you live long enough, you're going to go through something traumatic. That's just part of being alive, being human. But where we are emotionally in that moment when that trauma occurs, or how we recover from that trauma, or how we really take care of ourselves in a healthy way psychologically, really starts not only at home but in the workplace. I think we all could agree that we spend more of our waking life with our coworkers, with the people, our work families. I'm going to call them work families. We spend more of our waking life with our work families than we do sometimes our actual families. I know when I was working on the road during this time, I would be gone for sometimes up to 4 months, 6 months at a time. I was constantly really having that stress of being away, feeling that my wife didn't understand what it was that I was doing and why I was doing it. But at the same time, I wasn't able to see her and see that what it was causing her. And that wasn't to say that working on the road is bad. It does add some additional pressures. And so during this time, there's explosive fights at home, and it actually caused my wife to go into early labor. At one point, we had such a bad fight that I yelling on the phone back and forth. I was working on the road, and she decided that she didn't feel safe getting in the car and driving, and decided that she would get some fresh air and walk. She walked about 3 miles to get home. I'm on the road a couple hours away. She walked home directly as a result of our tense household. And that next morning, I got a call from her saying, "Hey, something's not right. I'm not feeling well. I'm going to go in and get checked out." I said, "Keep me in the loop." The next call I got was from her. She said, "They're not letting me leave today. They said Joanna's going to be born today." It was way too soon. And so it was at minimum 6 weeks too early
but they actually suspected it was even earlier than that. So I hopped in my truck. I told my crew I have a personal emergency, personal matter to take care of, and I didn't say anything else about what was going on. And I went as quickly as I could that 4-hour drive to get to the hospital. After getting to the hospital, there was a whole lot of complications, and that was probably the most helpless I personally have ever felt, because I'm a fixer, I'm a doer. That was my way of dealing with these things. That was really how I was taught to deal with these things, is okay, that's a problem. It's not, let's not engage emotionally, psychologically. Let's find a concrete solution to fix the problem. But as I'm watching my wife lose consciousness as they are before my daughter was even born, and then they're having to give her a shot of adrenaline, and then causing Joanna's heart rate, who again had not yet been born, to spike to about 270 beats per minute. And I'm watching all of these things, and I can't do anything about it. The next morning, so right when Joanna was born, they rushed her down to the NICU, or they call it a couple things, special care nursery, but essentially the intensive care unit, or the ICU for infants. Typically a mother or father get to hold their baby right after they're born. They come out looking like an alien with all the goo and everything on them. You clean them up a little bit, but then they put that child on mom's chest and really allow her that immediate connection. There's a psychological component to that we'll get here in a moment, about what that does to the chemical balance in somebody's brain, that physical connection. But we didn't get that with Joanna. She was rushed down. My wife, I took one look at my wife, and she pointed at the door and she said, "Go," meaning follow our child, stay with our child. And so I did. That next morning, we get a call from my mom. So I have a 3-year-old daughter, Bella, at this point, who we had gotten a call quickly the day before saying that when she was picked up from daycare, she was not feeling well. She was coughing, and it was having some trouble breathing. Next morning, said, "I'm going to take her into urgent care. She's not doing great." The next phone call I got was that her breathing saturation had dropped to 72%, and that she was being rushed to the hospital in an ambulance, and that she actually became unresponsive during that time on the way to the ambulance. So for 4 days, we had both of our kids in the same hospital at the same time, and my wife and I just took turns hopping back and forth, going to spend time with each of our children. My daughter Joanna stayed in the special care nursery of that NICU for much longer than 4 days. But after 4 days, my oldest daughter was released and able to go home, and I had to go back to work. I was the only person who had an income at the time, and we had work to be done and timelines to keep, and I had to immediately go back to an active job site, much more active than even the one we just saw in that video a moment ago. So this is a rhetorical question, but how easy or difficult do you think it was for me to keep my mind focused on the job at hand, to leave, to do the impossible thing that we all think we can do, is to leave our problems in the truck or leave our problems at home? How difficult was it for me to stay safe on that job site under all these circumstances? How difficult do you think it was for me to stay sober? I had somebody who knew me well enough on my good days to know something was going on. So when I got back to the site, people said, "Everything good?" And I said, "It's all good. Let's get back to work." I didn't tell anybody what was going on. That was a camouflage that I had put on that really kept me in survival mode growing up. I grew up in a household. My dad worked construction for 37 years. And there was a lot of good qualities taught, loyalty, hard work, providing for your family. But there were some things missing: how to process difficult emotions in a healthy way, how to even identify those emotions, and then what to do about that. And I would say that probably the prevalent feeling in my household growing up, that was an almost everyday occurrence, was fear of uncertainty and fear in general. And so we have a lot of people in this industry who are just like that, young man that you saw in that video a moment ago. We have a lot of people, a large majority of the people in this industry who grew up in similar households. Those households where, it's keep your chin up, stiff upper lip, stop crying. Let's, really handling emotions with that fixer, that doer approach. And a lot of people in this industry grow up not really even being able to identify their psychological symptoms. And really, we kind of put it into this funnel, and what comes out the other end is anger. You'll see anger that comes out of nowhere. Really, what's underneath that anger is a lot more complex. And so we're going to go through some complicated things here real quick. But what I want everybody to keep in mind is we're going to just talk about briefly about the brain and what happens to the brain in both a healthy environment and what happens in an unhealthy environment. Then I want to briefly talk about, very briefly talk about the financial component. We'll circle back, and then we're going to talk about some of the other topics with our guest speakers here. So I want to pull up an image to show everybody. And then I'll keep going. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so these are what we call the happy brain chemicals. These are what give you the good feelings that help you to stay motivated, help you to survive, really. And so when you're looking at this, dopamine, that energizes you when you find a way to meet that need, whatever that need is. Serotonin is what turns on when you gain an advantage, when you feel that sense of accomplishment, when you have a job well done and that performance, really that accomplishment. Oxytocin is the big one we're going to focus on today, because that is what gives you the perceived and real experience of trust. Oxytocin produces trust, and trust and a feeling of not being safe cannot coexist at the same time. And so why we're going to focus on oxytocin is because that is the chemical that makes a chemical reaction in the brain that makes a person have that experience of feeling like they belong, like they're connected, and that feeling of trust. And trust equals safety, and safety equals trust. You can't have one without the other. And so that's all about relationships, all about physical touch and contact, about going deeper than just the surface level. And so when you shake hands with somebody, if you're thinking about it in terms of a business meeting, I know there's been a lot fewer opportunities to shake hands because of the pandemic that we've been going through. But physical contact, it's that handshake is not meaningless. The reason that the handshake is a way to end or start a meeting, or both, or a hug, or whatever that is, for depending on the relationship, that signifies I can trust you and you can trust me. We're going to connect physically, we're going to shake hands, and in that moment it fires that synapse in your brain that produces that oxytocin that says, yeah, I can trust this person. And it also works the other way. So these are and then when you look at endorphins, these are that natural euphoria you get when you are laughing, when you are feeling joy, when you're feeling that sense of accomplishment. It's essentially your body's way of killing pain. It's a natural analgesic, which is another way to say painkiller. And so in a healthy, psychologically healthy environment, these are the chemicals that you're going to see show up in a person's brain. Dr. Amy Edmondson is a leader in psychological safety, and she has this wonderful quote about really what psychological safety is. Psychological safety and courage are simply two sides of the same coin, immensely valuable coin. Both are and will continue to be needed in a complex and uncertain world. So as we're going into this psychological safety, when they say courage, this is what I want to make absolutely clear. Courage in this context means vulnerability. It means allowing yourself to let your guards down and to trust and have that reciprocated. And we'll dig into that here in a moment. But for the business folks in the room, I want to do something. I'm going to share this with all of you in the follow-up to this webinar. But there is the National Safety Council. So NSC has a wonderful list of resources. I'm not actually directly affiliated with them in any way. I just think what they're doing is pretty incredible. They have both a substance abuse and then a mental well-being or mental illness calculator. And so we'll since it's up on here right now, we're going to start with substance abuse. So you can use this link. We're going to choose Minnesota for now. So Minnesota, we're going to say that this fictitious contractor has 250 employees, and they, for the sake of this, they only operate in Minnesota. So all 250 are working in Minnesota. And then we're going to choose the construction industry. This is what the annual cost, or this is what it is costing that company per year, what they're hemorrhaging per year because of substance abuse alone. Now, the numbers for mental illness or that mental safety really are quite similar. And so you can put those two together and you can see that it is a major cost, that even putting this off a few months and not having this part of your everyday vernacular, everyday, increasing that culture of psychological safety. It's not a one and done approach. I wish you could come to this webinar, and if you wonder why I keep looking over, it's because I've already gone over on time. You can't come to one webinar or go to one training one time a year and think that that's going to solve the problem. I wish that were the case. We always want to have this big solution to a big problem, but the reality is that this is going to take a commitment. And so looking at ways that if you are investing in education and training, if you are investing in this as a core initiative, you will actually see for every dollar you're investing, you're getting 4 in return. But looking at things like turnover, looking at things like having to lose an employee for temporarily while they go to treatment. And what I'm going to do is I'll pull up the mental health one after our guest speakers. But before our guest speakers, I'm going to do a quick rapid fire poll. And I couldn't quite figure out how to get the actual poll to show up. So you'll have to answer these on your own, not in the chat. But as we're talking through this, let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen. As we are talking through the next couple topics, I have a little way for you can kind of gauge how you're doing, how your business is doing. So when I ask these questions here in a moment, what I want you to think of is in terms of either your direct department, the people you work alongside, that crew you work alongside. If you're somebody who is in a leadership position, who are your direct reports? What supervisors directly report to you? Also think in terms of who you directly report to, who's above you. And if you're a person who is a business owner, thinking in terms of who do you interact with to run the day-to-day operations of your business? Who are the people that you call at the end of the day and say, how did it go today? If you're not personally on the job site. Who are those people that are your closest knit group that you lean on for support at work to get the job done? You lean on for information to better the outcomes and to really stay on track. So think in terms of those people as I ask these questions. They're statements. Actually, they're not questions. And in your mind, or you can do this in the chat if you'd like, but I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. Just say agree or disagree. There's a couple at the end that also have an I don't know. But for most of these, if the answer is I don't know, that would mean no, disagree. So first statement, I know where my members of my crew or my department, I know where they grew up. I know where they came from. Next question, I know if my direct reports are married, single, divorced, or if they have kids. Do you agree or disagree with that? I can confidently describe their goals for their careers and their future in the industry. Where they want to progress, how they want to progress in their careers. I can confidently describe their personal goals and hopes for the future and for their family's future. I can confidently describe what they are passionate about and what drives them to get out of bed each morning. I know their biggest challenges and weaknesses professionally. Agree or disagree? I know their biggest challenges and weaknesses personally outside of work. I know if they are satisfied with their job and feel adequately challenged and a sense of purpose. I know if they are having difficulties with family or personal issues and how that affects their ability to perform their tasks. I know when they are struggling with personal or family issues or concerns. If they have children, I know their children's names. I know their ages. I know their baseline temperament and how often it fluctuates up or down. Agree or disagree? I can confidently describe what causes their emotions to fluctuate in either direction. I know if my employees of color feel included and part of the team. I have awareness of the social norms and structures within their communities, that would be persons of color, and culture. As a follow-up to that question, I thoughtfully consider how my actions and words show empathy and consideration of their culture, and I attempt to approach them in a manner that respects their diversity. So we went through those. I will also send out that list of questions. That is a very small glimpse of what an organizational assessment around psychological first aid looks like. And if you are feeling that you answered disagree to a lot of those questions, really the claim of what we're trying to convey is the importance of this in every element of everything that you do. And with that, I am very excited to introduce our first guest, and it is Yolanda McIntosh. She is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for AGC of Minnesota and is working on the Culture of Care initiative. With that, I'm actually gonna hand things over to you, Yolanda.
Thank you, Trent. One of the questions that you had for me was, why is mental safety a central element in the D&I space? And I gave it some thought. And mental safety or psychological safety should be a central element for all workers and employees in all spaces. So not just in the D&I space. I want to first clear that up. However, the construction industry has a history and image of this alpha white male power dynamic that has prided itself in harassing, bullying, and hazing of its white male counterparts, workers, and employees as a form of leadership and management. Then there's the added component of discrimination based on race, gender, and sexual orientation, just to name a few. Now, these protected classes are getting the brunt of the harassment, hazing, and bullying, not only from some managers and leaders, but from some of the very counterparts who experienced such mistreatment in the very same workplace. Although no one should come to work expecting to be mistreated in this manner in order to keep their job, you have some workers and employees who have been able to tolerate the mistreatment. Why? Because when the workday is over, they can leave it at work. But when it comes to race, For Black and Brown people, particularly for African Americans, we cannot leave our color at home or at work. We do not have the luxury of compartmentalizing when we can turn our race off, turn it on, leave it behind, or bring it with us. The problem is, no matter where we go, we continue to be judged based on our race. And for many of us, in so many situations taking place throughout society, on any given day, race determines whether we will arrive safely to work or arrive safely home. In this space of psychological safety, AGC of America has initiated a resource called Culture of Care. Culture of Care. CARE stands for Commit, Attract, Retain, and Empower. I am hopeful that everyone will take the time to go through these resources, and it will address so many issues, not only harassment and bullying and hazing and mental health. It's going to also provide resources that you use for toolbox talks with your crews, in your offices, knockoff conversations. I'm hoping that we start looking at ourselves and that our leadership will make these commitments as well, personally, as well as throughout all of our organizations. And we can do this because we need to address our biases. This is the part that keeps missing from the whole dynamic of being able to create the safe and belonging workspaces that we all deserve. Therefore, psychological safety in the workplace is a central element in the D&I space. Trent, back to you.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. When we were talking the other day, we had a wonderful reconnection and a wonderful meeting. One of the things that we discussed, and you just nailed right on the head, is that if we're talking about psychological safety at work for everyone, that this is a central core that can't be missed. And is important for us to. So she's doing wonderful work. The Culture of Care, check it out. When I send out that PDF document with the bios, there'll be a direct link. Please take the time to check out the work that they're doing. It's phenomenal. They have really found a way to really help a lot of people and help a lot of businesses. Because again, this isn't just as a business owner, you're thinking of, yes, your workforce, but also your financial health, and these tie in together so important. So thank you, Yolanda, for your contribution. Our next guest is a suicide loss survivor, Bob Swanson, and he's the former president of Swanson and Youngdale. He has a remarkable story. His bio is going to be sent out as well, with some links to his blog. And then we'll also have a link. He was gracious enough to be interviewed on BPM Wellness's podcast to tell his story in greater length. But I'm going to turn it over to Bob here as soon as I can pull it off of Yolanda. There we go. All right. And without further ado, I want to introduce Bob Swanson. Take it away, Bob.
Thank you, Trent. This has been really a remarkable get together, and thank you for letting me be part of it. So I want to talk somewhat as a contractor, and a lot of what I'm going to say was what I call old Bob, new Bob. I didn't know him very much before our son's death, and I didn't understand his illnesses. And I think I've gained a lot of understanding, you would say, the hard way. So we have a tough industry, and there's that expectation: show up to work, get the job done, and if you can't do it, you can't work for anymore. And that's kind of, so people to keep their jobs, they don't want to show their vulnerability that they have any issues going on. And then I think of what a statement I heard for years, and see if any of you have heard this. Bob, I got stuff going on at home, but I never let that impact my work. I think we all know that is totally false. And part of what we've been saying today is what happens at home impacts your work. We have to be, and yet there's that balance. Oh boy, I don't want to know everything about our employees. I don't want to intrude. That's their private world. But the other hand, if that private world is not right and it's affecting their daily performance and perhaps affecting their safety, quality of work, we need to know something about what's going on. But the big challenge is, how do you create the environment? So a couple barriers. One, if someone is living with a mental illness, living with substance use disorder, or myself had a family member that was living with a mental illness and substance use disorder, he wore a mask and I wore a mask. So think of an iceberg. I'd come to work, everything's fine, but you know what nobody knew earlier in or late in the evening or early morning, we just moved our son to a different location, which was ours, because his roommate kicked him out, or his significant other kicked him out. We did that at 2 a.m. I'm tired today, but I still got to work. And I didn't show that. I showed a game face. And it wasn't really safe to say anything about it. I didn't feel like I could say anything about it. And here I'm president of the company. So the other piece I want to say is everything you're going to do about this issue, think of it like safety, because it is. We don't just talk safety at an annual safety meeting. In this industry, because it's important, we talk safety every day. We do hazard analysis on every job site every day. We do toolbox talks every week on every job site. Well, what if we started expecting our leaders in the crew and our department leaders how is your crew doing today? How are your people doing? I want to report. I want you to know that. That's one of the expectations I have. It's your responsibility. And add that to the list of, do we have all the equipment we need? Do we have all the materials? Is your crew ready to go to work at their top performance? And then we've got to create that environment. So partly how you do that. Terminology is one. Oh, yeah, we let go of that person because he's just a drunk. Or I don't know, he's got some mental health issues. He's crazy. Well, boy, no one's going to come to you with that attitude, or that filters through the whole crew. So create an environment where we're even using the right terminology. Joe, he's working on some issues. Actually, if that person's willing to tell you, he's at Betty Ford for some inpatient to help with his substance use disorder. And here's the other thing. When people have physical illnesses and come back to work or a work injury, we give them some space to work back into the workforce. What do we do if somebody's at inpatient facility for 28 days? The first day they come back to work, it's let's hit it, come on. There's no light duty. So we got to treat them the same. It's part of our body, part of our being. Then I would throw out, it's not just your employees, it's their family members. So let me talk about that. As our son was going through all his difficulties for what I look back now, 20 years, that weighed on me. And I found resources outside of work to help deal with that, but that weighed on me and affected my performance. Many of your employees, they may be fine, but they have family members that are struggling. So I was on a Construction Financial Management Association webinar back in 2017. And I know it's much worse today, but one of the questions was asked in that webinar, how many of you have a family member who is living with a mental illness or has had suicidal thoughts? 53% of the people said yes. Think about that. That's over half. So you may say, well, all my employers are doing fine. Well, how about their families? That's weighing on them. And The last thing I want to just make sure you're aware of is I do a lot of presentations to a lot of companies, and I've had that privilege and opportunity. Most of the time, if somebody comes up after my presentation and wants to talk one-on-one, it's not about their issue as far as, hey, I want some resources. I live with substance use disorder. Do you know any? It's, I've got a son I'm really concerned about. They're living with substance use disorder with the use of heroin. I don't know what to do. I had to kick him out of the house. I don't know where he is. What do you recommend? Those are painful, painful stories. That's what I hear more often that people want to come up and talk about because they're just in despair. But I would say if I asked them, how many in your company where you work know about that? It would be zero because of the shame, because of the stigma. I lived with the shame for a long time with our son's illnesses. He was ashamed. Why? We thought it was our fault. These are illnesses. We don't say cancer is somebody's fault. So create that environment, make it safe to talk about it, but then your actions speak volumes. If somebody comes to you and says, I need a week off, family vacation, or I need a week or weekend, we're going deer hunting, I doubt you ever say no to that. And you don't even think twice about it. But what if somebody says, I need a week off. I need some time to sort out my life. We got problems at home. You may say yes, but you may have that question, what's wrong with that person? It isn't a right or wrong issue. It's a health issue. It's a well-being issue. So I know when that I used up my time. I just wanted to stress how important it's not one and done. You're not intruding in people's lives. They're going to feel safe that you care. There's nothing more any of us really want. We want to know people care about us. And when you're in that vulnerable state, you tend to close off people. So I would encourage you to make it something that's an expectation of all your supervisors. Not only how well do they know the crew, not how well do they know the people in their department, but is there an atmosphere where people can come to them and be safe about talking about their issues? So Trent, thank you so much for letting me be part of this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bob. I wish we had all day to talk to both you and Yolanda, because you have such a wealth of experience and lived experience and industry experience. So thank you so much, Bob. It's remarkable work what you and Yolanda are doing and the impact you're having on the industry. All right, to really draw this to a conclusion, I put the link in the chat for that calculator. We're going to do one more screen share, and then I'm going to walk you through some solutions really quickly. I know we're almost out of time, but we're going to make these solutions available to you. Reach out to me directly, twilliams@bearingpointwellness.com. I'll make sure to get this all sent out. So again, real quick with that calculator, I'm going to do it for a national contractor now. So if you're a national contractor operating in all states, and let's just say you have 1,200 employees, we'll keep it kind of at that range. I know that there's even people on this call who have much more than that. And so when you do that 1,200 employees on a national level, your total cost for for not making this a priority. And what I mean by priority is not wait until the fall, not waiting until the winter, but starting tomorrow. What are you going to do to start to increase the psychological safety components? And so psychological safety, just again, really quick in a nutshell, it is a shared belief that a team is a safe place for individual and interpersonal risk taking. And so I'm going to put that quote in the chat. And so that she is the Dr. or Professor Amy Edmondson, and she is really the person who kind of developed this framework, at least in there's a lot of scientific research that goes into it. So real quick, some of the options and solutions available for you. You may already utilize them, but employee assistance programs, there's some very good ones. Team Corporation, I have maybe a little bit of a bias because I was up until last fall, the executive director for Team Corporation, but that's a wonderful resource. Sand Creek would be another one that operates in this the construction space. Organizations like CSDZ, Holmes Murphy, they will really help if you haven't already had the opportunity to connect with them. They're a great resource to help you navigate and find certain programs. And then I want to talk briefly, I think I'm still sharing my screen. I'm going to walk you through this quickly. This will be made available. It is on our website. You will get access to it by joining this event. Just go to BPM or bearingpointwellness.com and you'll sign up and you get our newsletter, our quarterly magazine, updates. If you opt in for that, you can opt out, absolutely. But with that, you get access to all the exclusive kind of behind the scenes content, namely this course catalog, service and course catalog. So really, when we're looking at this service and course catalog of BPM Wellness, we are taking this from a standpoint of really proactive and preventative clinical work almost. If you can think about having preventative medicine, that's your diet, your exercise, the things that they tell you to do so you can avoid the triple bypass surgery, so you can avoid the type 2 diabetes and some of those things. So think of those employee assistance programs, patient advocacy programs are great. They're like an insurance policy. They're there when you need them and you hope you never need them. But that isn't good enough for me, and it shouldn't be good enough for you to wait until things go bad. And so that proactive training and daily support. So we're thinking of this in terms of pulse. What do you know about your organization? That brief assessment that I walked through. There's a more significant assessment, and that's that organizational. Where do you stand in your psychological safety? Now, it's good to have a third party conduct this kind of evaluation because you eliminate, not completely eliminate, you drastically reduce that fear of bias or that fear of my employer not liking the answer. But it gives you a good sense of who may be at risk, who could be someone we reach out to. So a couple of the things. Project specific landing pages for companies. So if you have out of town work or really any job where people need to know what resources are available, reach out to BPM Wellness and we will put together a project specific plan. And it goes through not only where to find a doctor in town and urgent care if you do need mental health resources, but it goes beyond that. Here are some events during that time period that you're in that area. Here are some events that you can go to for fun. Here are some, non-bar, non-drinking alternatives that you can utilize as well. So we put together a robust, and that's per job, as many as you want to partner with us. It goes hand in hand too with our supervisory training, really that safety training, to equip people to be essentially first responders when there's a mental health crisis, or to be that daily advocate for psychological safety. Anyone who goes through those courses gets one of these. And I'm sharing my screen. I realize you probably can't see me. Stop for a moment. Gets one of these, hard hat sticker. I was going to put it on my hard hat. I didn't have a chance to this morning. But basically on that is the QR code that will bring people directly to those landing pages on your job specific resource pages. And so and that can be updated as frequently, and we can plug in different QR codes, but that QR code can stay with your company and be updated without having to issue out a new sticker or new posters, things like that. We have coaching support. And so this is that daily, we can come alongside people and do recovery support coaching, supervisory support coaching, executive support coaching, and family support coaching. And these are all a little bit different than counseling. Coaching and counseling are two separate things. And we'll save that for a different day. That BPM Pulse team building is such an important part of this. So getting together and having fun with your team outside of the work site or on the work site, if this training needs to be fit into that schedule. So I want to say everything I'm talking about on the services that we can provide on an active job site. I'm familiar with an active job site. We have all the PPE necessary, and with your permission, of course, an invitation, of course, we can come do these trainings at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning before your site opens for the day or gets going. We can do this after the site's shut down. We can provide coaching during coffee breaks, and we can even walk the site. And while that guy's putting his tools down for a minute and smoking a cigarette, we can come alongside and have that conversation just to check in, that daily finger on the pulse of what we're doing. So leadership assessments, organizational assessments, we can help you with strategy. So at that beginning of the year, when you're going through your SWOT analysis, when you are doing your benefits and cost analysis and creating the objectives for the coming year, we can not only facilitate and help you to organize those meetings, but we can help you to incorporate this framework into that as well. Full organizational assessment, and then a future leaders group. So if you are trying to develop leaders within your organization who hit the ground running with all of this in mind, we have that ability to create a future leaders group that would meet quarterly over the course of a year, with check-ins with each individual during that time as well. Now, our impact services, these are employee mediation, and I know we're over time, so if you need to hop off, feel free to do so. I'll make sure you get access to this. I'm going to skip this part for now. I'm going to come back to it. I don't want anyone to miss our wellness portal. So you can engage with all of our services directly from a portal that you design, and it has your branding. It is comfortable for your people, and it's a great onboarding tool to get people going right away. But you can engage with your coaches. You can have access to articles, our podcasts, all of our training courses, depending on which level of subscription you want to go with. And then the main thing I want to focus on very quickly is our foundations training program. And so kind of mirroring OSHA 10 and OSHA 30, we've developed a mental safety training course that starts with just an introduction to mental safety, introduction to addiction in the workplace, and then continues to build from there and all the way up to BPM safety steward training, so that that person who's gone through that mental health first aid training and psychological first aid training and is a supervisor, to equip them to be that person on the ground, that safety steward, if you will, to kind of keep with that vernacular. And then a supervisor's guide to mental safety. And so if you go to our website, you'll see just a brief preview of the cover, but we have a field guide that's been developed for our courses. And then each course has a workbook that not only contains the work that they did on that course, but also has some of the solutions that we've discussed today that they can implement on a daily level, on a daily basis as well. And then on that note, with that field guide, we know that accessibility, and you have to think labor hours when you're doing training as a business owner, especially. How do we take 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours? How do we take that time and pay for that time? It is, remember, a good investment, that 1 in 4 ratio. But we also know that's difficult to get everybody in the same place at the same time. And so we have the ability to do these live virtually training, much like you are seeing today, but with interaction, not the webinar. It would be more discussions and breakout rooms. And then we also have a e-learning course that if you reach out to me, we can schedule a demo for you for a couple of the decision makers of your organization. And it's a full interactive e-learning course with videos, with quizzes, with discussions, things like that. Really, what we want people to focus on is how to build those connections, because connections oxytocin, trust and safety go hand in hand. And so we have a couple different levels, different packages, trainee package, apprentice. So if you're just trying to get you dip your toe in, see if this is going to take off, starting with the trainee, which is the 2 introduction courses, to the apprentice, to the steward, and then the master, train the trainer. So the master, train the trainer. If you are a safety director or somebody high up, this is a very immersive year-long program in which you'll work directly with me to not only be equipped to provide this training that we provide for future employees, but to be able to be equipped with enough knowledge, with enough of the intervention skill set to really be an advocate for your supervisors, for your foremen as they're in the field. And so that was a very, very brief thing. Where I always recommend people start, that organizational assessment, leadership assessment. How are you doing with your culture currently and your psychological safety? Critical incident response training. So we always think of the critical incident response professionals like that EAP coming in. But there is another element to this, is how as an organization do you recover from a critical incident? You know, if it's one of your employees that passed away, or one of your employees who was driving the equipment or operating the equipment that led to an accident. Questions you don't want to think about, but like when to take their name off the scheduling board, and what's that going to do to the employees when they see that name being erased? How do you really regain that sense of safety? A great place to start is that employee assistance program, but we can create a handbook for you to follow for your organization, and we can even go as far as doing it per job. This is the point of contact. This is what we do in the event of emergency, much like you would practicing a fire drill. We all remember those from school. So I think that's a good place to stop. I am going to be speaking at an upcoming construction safety seminar on May 17th. It's a virtual event. It's the OSHA safety seminar. I'm going to be speaking much more in depth on this topic and digging deeper. That is on May 17th. We'll send out an invitation or really more information and a link to register for that. Would love to see you there. So what I want to really leave you with in conclusion today is that if you take away one thing from this, is that waiting to solve this issue is costly, not only from a human standpoint, but for your business financially. And I don't want to see that for any of you and your businesses and your team. If you think back about those suicide statistics, we're losing 15 American workers per day in this industry to suicide. We need to overhaul the way that we view mental health, psychological safety, and really putting it into that category of safety that not only affects that individual, but is an all hands on deck, starting with leadership. Leadership, I'm sorry, I'm gonna hold you to task here. If you are unwilling to lead by example, it would be unlikely that the people who work for you will be on board. But what I have seen and what has been successful is when the leadership starts by doing this training for their team, and that goes on to the next level all the way down, you basically have this lifeline in your organization that not only demonstrates that you're willing to do what you're asking them to do, but gives you that same framework. So at the end of the day, when you call your foreman, when you call your people and say, how did the day go? How is everybody doing? You start to ask, how are people doing emotionally? One of the things you already probably ask is, what materials do you need from me for tomorrow? What do you need from me tomorrow to make you successful? And that's usually materials, tools, manpower. But what if you incorporated, what do you need? What support do you need from me? How is the team doing? How are you doing? Especially when you hit July, the dog days of summer, and stress and exhaustion, physical pain is at its maximum. That's when you need this the most. I would encourage you not to wait until October, November. And even if it means doing this on the job site, please reach out. I can either talk you through what we offer, or I can point you to things we might not offer and some good options for you there. Thank you again to Bob and and Yolanda, and thank you again to all of you. Let me go back to gallery view and remove the spotlight. So thank you to all of you for joining. And this is an exciting time to be a part of this industry. I think we're seeing the same thing that happened back in 1913 when there was legislation passed about physical safety on the job site being a priority. I think we're at a time now where we're going to see that not decrease but increase in this industry. And my hope someday is that we start to, those of you who went to school to be safety professionals, I asked one person one time, how much of that, multi-year program do you spend on mental health? And I think the answer I got for that particular program was 4 hours. And I would love to see this be equally as part of that training someday, because we can't disconnect our brains and our emotions from our body no matter how much we want to, and they are both connected and both part of what makes a person feel psychologically safe and mentally safe in the workplace. Thank you for your time. That hour went by very quickly. We also have an upcoming, May is Mental Health Month, and so we have a series of webinars that we're going to do weekly. So take a look at our hub page, I think, for this meeting, that Zoom Events Hub. Reach out to me directly. And we have that coming up. And then June, as you know, is Safety Month. And so we're going to do something special for Safety Month as well. So I hope I can connect with you. If you have any questions that we didn't get to, please let us know. And thanks for joining. I'm going to hang out for a bit if anyone has questions, but feel free to drop off. I hope to see you soon. Thanks. And let me know if you're somebody who has questions. I can actually unmute you. Just let me know in the chat if you have a question you want to come on and actually ask one of us directly. Oh, yep, we have a question. All right, so Christopher, let me allow you to speak. I think you're muted. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, great, thank you. Just a quick question. So the company that I work for is commercial roofing, and we work all around the country. Most of our subcontractors that we use, very different backgrounds, different cultures. But how can, like from what Bob was mentioning earlier, how can we draw that line where we can ask emotional well-being or mental well-being without crossing that line where, they start to wonder why we're trying to get so involved?
Absolutely. I'll take a stab at that, and then Bob or Yolanda, if you have things to add, feel free. Starting with that education and training for yourself, because it is a delicate line, but there are things that you can ask that may seem like you're crossing that line, but until you have that training, it's difficult to determine. And then having somebody you can check in and bounce that off in the moment. So whether that is an organization like mine with BPN Wellness, whether that is an EAP program or some other resource, in the moment, calling and being coached through that. You can also have us come do a site visit and talk with the person directly. And so where you can basically have us sit down with that person in a way that's not obvious for everyone else to see, or it could be a phone call or a virtual where you may kick it off and make the introduction, and then you hop off. And we talk to that person individually. So there's a lot of different ways to approach that, but you would be surprised how much you can ask that we've kind of been taught is off limits, and it's kind of unlearning those patterns, if that makes sense. But that's an excellent question. Bob or Yolanda, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, if I could. So a couple thoughts would be, it's sometimes very innocent. So sometimes we all say, hey, how you doing? And the answer is, I'm living the dream. I mean, I've heard that 1,000 times. and that's that mask. Everything's fine or it's not. So one, if you, it's because of the shame, it's a one-on-one conversation. It's not shaming anybody. So I would suggest it's, hey, Bob, lately some things have been going on and that are affecting your work. I see your productivity's down and your quality's down, and the crews tell me you're kind of becoming a pain in the you know what. And I wondered if we could talk about it, because I want you to be well. I want you to be part of the A team. I don't want you to be impacted negatively, and you're an important person and I care about you. So is this something we can talk about? And then I use kind of are you okay? And it's okay if you're not, because, you know, if I have a physical illness, I go get some help. If you're dealing with something that's not physical, we have resources, and I got them right here in my phone. So part of it's having available resources. So can we talk about this? You may not get, you will still be, I'm okay, don't worry about it. Well, I want you to know I'm here for you. What often happens is a day or two later, that person will call you and say, you know, I've been thinking about what we talked about, and you said you have some resources. Could you text those to me, or could you let me know what those resources are? It's that follow-up. It just may not happen right away, but they know you care about them. And then what goes beyond that, we all know the crew talks. And what I found in the company after I got smarter is people would say, you know, you should talk to Bob. He's got some resources, and you know, it helped me. He told me to go to team, and boy, that's been a big help, but I don't remember their phone number or whatever it was. And lo and behold, I get another call, and it just grows because people can now trust the organization. It's okay. So don't be impatient. One win is a win, believe me, but it grows. And those would be some of my thoughts.
And I just would add one more thing, really quickly. It's just like any new skill. It feels awkward at first, and that's where that background training comes in, because there's ways to ask open-ended questions where you're getting that information without, say, asking somebody, well, is it something to do with your meds, your medications? That's a question that's a no-no. But there's a way to ask that in a way with, how's everything going? Tell me about, you know, what you've been going through lately, any changes that have been happening, and keeping it open-ended and then listening. You know, that old rule, 80% listening, 20% talking, especially in this situations, because people want to talk about it, but they also want to know that they're safe to talk about it first. And so we always want to go to that tool. What tool can I use in those situations? But I would encourage you and your company to explore maybe some additional training, or maybe, you know, finding how your relationships are with those subcontractors and what is their environment like. But starting with yourself and then kind of growing from there. Hopefully, I think. And then Yolanda, did you have anything to add? Okay, Chris.
No,
Do you go by Chris or Christopher?
Chris is fine. Chris is fine. And yeah, absolutely. I thank you very much for the clarification. I mean, laying that foundation properly can open the door, you know, down the road.
Wonderful. And if you're working with like multicultural contractors, you know, we have all of our trainings are in, I didn't mention this, I should have mentioned this when the whole group was here, but we offer that in many different languages, and have interpreters to work with people. And so that we don't want that to ever be a barrier as well. And so I just wanted to make that known as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Of course. Anyone else have, thank you for the question, Chris. I'm going to actually include that question when I send out the information. I'm going to include that question and how we answered that. And then we are also going to be giving access to this recording as well. So our last couple people hanging on, I don't want to call attention directly to you, but if you have questions, we'd love to hear it. And if you were just hanging out to hear more answers to the questions, we'll all sit here in awkward silence for a few moments.